Good morning, good afternoon, folks, depending on where you're dialing in from. Just going to walk you really quickly through what we're going to cover today. So we want this webinar to be largely educational, but we also want to give you a quick backdrop about Greenshades for those of you who may not be familiar with us and our platform. So we'll give a really quick snapshot of that. We're then going to flow right into it. We're going to do a quick recap of what were the biggest events that impacted us, that impacted the world of work in 2022. Before moving into a view of what we're actually looking at just over the horizon in 2023. Now, if we've learned anything during the past few years, it's that you need to be ready for anything. So we're going to share a couple of tips and tricks there as well, so how you can get prepped for whatever comes next. And of course, as time permits, we're going to flow into some Q&A. All right, so now that you know what we're going to be covering, let's meet the folks who are going to be talking about it. So you've already heard from me. I'm Mark Moschetto. I'm the founder and CEO of the Kickmotor Consulting Group, but over the past couple decades, I've spent a lot of time in the HR, payroll, HCM technology sector, really from a global perspective. But I've had the honor of teaming with Greenshades for the past few years now, where I get the chance to support today's co-presenter and her team, Danica. Hey, Danica.
Hey, Mark. I'm Danica Weepa. I'm the Director of Marketing at Greenshades. I have a strong ERP background, but I spent a lot of time in various roles across technology. I've been with Greenshades now a year and a half, and I'm really excited about what we've got going on and moving forward, the technology we're rolling out, our focus. I have a passion for market trends and research, and I'm really excited for today's fact-filled webinar.
Awesome.
So before we jump into the presentation, I just wanted to give everyone a bit of information about Greenshades. Some of this, many of you might already know, some of this might be kind of new, but we're a 20-year-old company. This year was our 20th anniversary. We have been supporting tax, payroll, and HR needs of mid-sized employers throughout the country, like I said, for about 20 years. We're centered around compliance. Greenshades Payroll is at the core of our cloud-based offering. We find it's easy to use, easy to implement, and the Greenshades Payroll is fully configurable. Our goal is for it to work alongside your processes rather than making you adhere to a rigid set of processes, such as some of our competitors may make you do. And this allows you to automate even the most challenging payrolls without upending your business. And unlike many of the outsourced payroll services, Greenshades delivers all the benefits of an automated platform, but allows you to maintain full control of your payroll processes. And more importantly, your payroll funds, which I know in economic challenges can sometimes be very important to companies. So as you can see here, we also offer a full array of onboarding and self-service tools, time and labor management solutions, and through a strategic alliance program, we can deliver access to an even more diverse array of advanced HR functionality. Things like Jazz HR and Learn Upon, which we also use internally as additional tools to build out our payroll and HR platforms. And all of this is backed up by personal onshore with stateside customer support. You'll never feel like you're just a number with us. So let's start taking a look at the events that shaped our world of work in 2022.
Awesome, great backdrop, thank you. So, we wanted to keep this webinar to just a half an hour, and it was really hard to pick just 3 events that impacted employers and employees in the past 12 months. I mean, I feel like employers and having a small business of my own, we've been saying, maybe things are going to settle down next year for I don't know, it feels like a decade. Yet here we are again with another, I'll say a weird set of events that are defining the year that was. Now, might be cheating a little bit with this one by counting the economy as a whole as one of the biggest factors that drove the market in 2022, but I think it's entirely appropriate. Now, the weirdest thing about this economy is that there's a lot of conflicting pieces of data that are making this unlike anything we've seen in at least a generation. So inflation, for example, I mean, it hasn't been this bad since the 80s. And, we've had some recent economic data that's showing that this might be trending down a little bit as a whole, but the core staple expenses such as food and fuel and housing remain really, really high.
Right, Mark. But if you look at the unemployment number, it's still very much a candidates market.
Hmm.
October's unemployment stayed at around 3.7%, which makes it a 50-year low. So employers are still looking to find ways to attract and retain employees. And whether you're looking at surveys from Analyst Group or Greenshades even did our own market sentiment survey that some of you might have participated in, unwanted attrition is still a big concern for employers. This is making them look at the entirety of their payroll and HR processes to ensure they're nailing the basics, such as accurate and timely payroll processing, as well as finding new ways to support employees and candidates through these tough economic times.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I think if we look just a little bit under the surface of the headlines for those employment numbers, it tells a bit of a different story. So, if you're not familiar with a place called the Ludwig Institute, they're an economic research firm, and they've developed a way to track something that they're calling the true rate of unemployment, which takes into account a category they call the functionally unemployed. And that's individuals who are looking for work and who do not currently have a full-time job but want one, or they're not earning a living wage through the work they're doing. So if you filter this definition, if you apply this definition on top, it actually shows the true unemployment numbers are closer to 23.6%. It's really insightful, and in my personal opinion, it's a more accurate view of what's going on.
I agree. And some of the most recent employment news highlights that things might not be as rosy as the official numbers imply.
Yeah, good
We're,
point.
we're really starting to see more layoffs at the market, especially in tech. The wave seems to have started with Twitter and their termination of roughly 3,700 workers. But in the weeks that followed, we've seen companies like Meta and Amazon with even larger cuts. Granted, these are multinational companies, and hopefully things are looking a little rosier with some of our medium-sized businesses, which most of you are, and stateside operating. But then we're seeing these random behaviors of bad bosses making headlines, not just in the HR community, but also mainstream and some stuff in the business press. Folks like the CEO of Better.com who terminated his employees via Zoom. I find that interesting that your company's name is Better.com and then the way you terminate your employees is absolutely horrific.
Oh,
So I guess that makes him worse than better. And of course, we all know about Elon Musk after purchasing Twitter, and that's creating a lot of buzz.
and it used to be that there was like the official party line that a company's PR team would put out, and that's what ran in the press, if the press even covered it at all. But word travels a lot faster and a lot more candidly with social media, like the Better.com example. So it's no surprise these stories are starting to break a little more frequently now. And I also think it's having some impact on the overall employee engagement issue, which is another really big area of concern for our employers. Now, Gallup recently ran a poll and found that only 21% of American workers are engaged at work, and that is shockingly low. It's an all-time low. And the term engagement is thrown around a lot lately, and at least in my feeble brain, it's thrown around so frequently that it almost loses its impact. So when we were researching for this webinar, we found this great description from Forbes magazine that really just kind of crystallized it for me, and I thought you'd like it too. So out of 100 people in your business at a 21% engagement rate, 21% are rowing towards your company goals. 19%, according to this survey, are actively rowing against them. And the other 60% are just kind of along for the ride and creating extra work. And it paints a pretty ugly picture. And it highlights, I think, in a very real way, just how detrimental non-engaged employees can be.
Yikes.
Yeah.
And then that brings us to our third trend for 2022, quiet quitting. As we all know, there's been a lot of discussion around this one lately because the definition of quiet quitting is a bit all over the place.
Mhm.
The most common way to describe the phenomenon is that of employees doing the bare minimum. Not so much that they're stretching beyond the confines of their job description, not so little that they would get fired. And according to Gallup, that represents 50% of the workers today. That's a big percent. And although this problem that cuts across all employee demographics, it does seem more prevalent in millennials and Gen Z workers versus those that are considered Gen Xers. Again, we think social media has a role to play, but there are several skits and commentary clips circulating on TikTok that aim to traditional corporate culture, but we haven't even seen hard data on that yet. Definitely something to keep an eye on. And I
Yeah.
think, Mark, I just saw SNL did a weekend update skit on it too.
Oh,
Drunk,
really?
drunk uncle or whatever that character's name is.
I totally missed it, but like it's creeping into, just that social fabric, right? Like you mentioned, TikTok, it seems there's always a skit that's kind of poking holes at traditional corporate culture. And, speaking as a card carrying member of Gen X myself, um, you know, me and my peers, we've definitely seen times when companies have terminated employees and like, sometimes long-standing, really loyal, really productive employees for reasons that seem more tied to, looking better for shareholders versus actually making changes that benefit the business. And it creates a perception that no matter how hard you may work, no matter how skilled you are at your craft, you're ultimately expendable. And like it's not a great feeling.
And Mark, as we were working on this deck together, we had a bit of internal debate as to whether these trends we just covered focused too much on the negative.
Mhm.
But as we were looking for research that would shed some light into the state of mind of your workers, we found that there's still a lot of stress and anxiety out there. Sugarcoating the situation isn't going to make it go away.
Yeah, exactly. And we had a really healthy debate on, including 10 minutes before we started the call, like, wow, there's a lot of there's a lot of negative stuff out there. But I mean, check out these stats. The economy is weighing so heavily on workers. Nearly 70% of them are reporting that they don't have emergency funds set aside. And this is making them very anxious about the economy in general, but also extremely anxious about work in specific. So as we head into 2023, this is likely to persist to some degree, particularly if layoffs continue or, God forbid, even accelerate.
And something to play on that emergency fund concept is that
Hmm.
we do have a solution. I think Greenshades even uses it called Patient, where you can offer interest-free loans to workers for emergency needs. It could be anything from medical to pet issues or car. You have a car that breaks down and it's going to cost a couple thousand. They can take a loan out with this patient tool and it's interest free. So that might be of interest to some of you guys as you're looking to add additional benefits that are low cost to your, or no cost in this case, to your employees.
Absolutely. Those medical bills can absolutely blindside a family. So that's an awesome point, Danica.
Well, or for me, I'm looking at the couple $1,000 car fix that I need to do soon. I was like, ooh, ouch.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
anyways, even these challenges and looking back, let's change gears and look at opportunities and moving ahead. Because I don't think it's all doom and gloom. There are still some opportunities out there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. You're right. Let's turn the corner. Let's break out our crystal ball and let's see what the future holds for us. But first, I think we're going to jump into a quick survey. So, Daniel, can you cue that up for us?
Absolutely. Let me get that launched for you right now.
Awesome. So, if you're looking at your team's workload, would you prefer more tech to help you automate the processes that you have in place today or create new processes? Would you like more team members to help you accommodate increased demand or extra work? We know a lot of organizations are wrestling with staffing issues. Would you like both more tech and more people, or is it none of the above? Is it something different? And unfortunately, if it's none of the above, we put into chat or something what that extra thing that you need is. We'd love to see what you think there. So as we look at the results, it looks like 43% want more tech to automate their processes. 10% need more team members. 38% of you want to have your cake and eat it too. You would like both more tech and more people, and 10% none of the above. Interesting stuff. Interesting, especially as we flow into looking at what's going on in 2023. And there are certainly a lot of staffing and employment related issues that we're going to have to contend with. So good stuff today. All right, so Danica, I think we are up to our first look at 2023.
As employers look for ways to improve the day to day lives of their employees, and I think of this often, There's going to be a strong back to basics movement where companies are going to take a look at internal processes and the systems in place to support these processes and make sure we're supporting workers in the new post-COVID era. For me, my whole staff is remote, including myself, and therefore kind of the work from home movement alone could be a huge catalyst for change with people living in different states than their employees may be headquartered. There could be pretty dramatic impact on payroll taxes. And with people working remotely, there's also a greater need to leverage tools that empower them to be more self-sufficient. I've found that sometimes with the younger generation that's just coming out of college, jumping into your first job being a remote job can be tricky. And that's where it's good to leverage tools like a Learn Upon to help them with training and stuff. And also, being able to do things like your own tax withholding elections to reporting life events. Being able to do that on a 24/7 cloud-based platform gives your staff time and place that's most convenient for them, and it reduces the workload of your already overworked HR and payroll teams because they don't have to keep bugging or manually pushing papers to people to get the basic W-4, W-2 stuff completed.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we're not just saying this because we deliver an HR and payroll platform. Each year, Sapient Insights Group conducts a really in-depth market survey where they reach out to employers and they gain insights specifically from the employers on a bunch of different issues surrounding, HR tech and payroll technology and things associated with that investment. If you haven't checked it out yet, bounce over to their site, download the report. But one of the key findings from this year we wanted to share with you here is that HR budgets are going up, and half of the companies they surveyed will be looking at changing a core payroll, time and attendance, or analytics platform. So it tells you how important these back to basic foundational tools are, that even as the economy has a lot of question marks for employers, they're still going to be ramping up investments, and working smarter and more efficiently is at the top of everyone's list, it seems. So employers just need to keep pace with that change.
Great point. And we'll include a link to that Sapient Insights Group report in our follow-up email, so it's easy for you guys to find. But as we look forward, you'll notice the common thread among our 2023 predictions is centered around improving the operational agility of your organization. We just don't know how economic and global events will cause the world of work to change and evolve. So as employers, you need to be ready to adapt.
100%. And, one of the changes that we're keeping an eye on is a shift in the work from home trend. So we're already seeing some organizations that are encouraging employees to come back into an office environment, at least on a periodic basis. And I think that trend might continue. Part of this could be due to fatigue on both sides of that equation, that as much as workers want flexibility, there's also a real need for camaraderie and real old-fashioned in-person collaboration. And as Danica mentioned, for onboarding new employees, particularly if they're new to the workplace, it can be really hard to just kind of jump into things from a virtual environment and be able to absorb everything from how to do the job to how to take advantage of the culture. Another thing that we're looking at is that there's a possibility that the candidate market power dynamic could shift back in favor of the employer again, and that could make at least a partial return to office a condition of employment. And again, we're not quite sure how this is going to go, but it's important to be ready for anything, right? And from a practical perspective, remember that, as you do things like holding offsite meetings or bringing employees to headquarters for work sessions, there could be tax implications based on where those employees live and where you're meeting and all that sort of stuff. So, just make sure that you're aware of the time and activity and location recording and act accordingly based on that, right? No one wants an unpleasant surprise come tax time. All right. And then, a lot of American workers are probably already looking at some dramatic tax changes this year because so many have joined the ranks of the self-employed. And that's our third trend for 2023 is that, the gig economy really has been gathering steam for years. but the trend accelerated during and just after the pandemic. And a recent McKinsey study revealed that millions of workers have now become independent workers. And that could be a contributing factor to the recruiting crisis that a lot of organizations are facing right now. Now, I made this move myself personally in 2019, and although it's been amazing, man, it hasn't been easy going out on your own being a solopreneur. And my gut tells me that not all of these individuals will like the challenges that come along with going it alone. So one way that as an employer, you can help to close the hiring gap is being open to employees who decide they might want to come back in and join the workforce again, right? Keeping in touch with them can be a great way to stay on their radar screen and remind them that the door is still open should they decide to return back to a more traditional work environment.
Yeah, and another positive of keeping in touch with them is tapping into their expertise on a contract basis. It could be a strong net positive for the business because you can still leverage their expertise, but doing so without all the overhead that comes with a full-time employee, and you're still offering them some flexibility. But whether you leverage contractors who know your business well, or you're hiring contractors and freelancers from other parts of the economy, you need to be aware of some policies that could really impact your business. So the Department of Labor and IRS have put together a punch list of sorts for determining if you're leveraging contractors as contractors or if you're really treating them like employees. This list includes the nature and degree of the worker's control over their work, the worker's opportunity for profit or loss based on their own managerial skill, investments made by the workers and the employer, the degree of permanence of the working relationship, the extent of work performed is an integral part of the employer's business, and the degree of skill and initiative exhibited by the worker. So if, for example, you're the only client of your contractor and they have very little choice in how they spend their day and invest their time, you could be at risk of having them classified as an employee in the eyes of the Department of Labor or IRS. So make sure you're consulting with your labor law attorney and make sure you're staying on the right side of this issue.
Yeah, that's great advice, Danica, and it's really important to keep an eye on those sorts of things. Those are the things that can creep up at you and cause some unpleasant surprises as you move forward through the year. So we're going to start wrapping it up. And as we mentioned before, your long-term success really all boils down to agility and resilience. And Daniel, I'm wondering if we can bring up our second poll question now. That
Sure.
was the one that I had shown the slide originally for folks. So we're going to imagine, if you will, that slide was back up.
we look back to look ahead.
There we go. Look at this. See, man, I love it when you host these calls. Right on. So our question this time really is, what do you think your department's budget will look like in 2023? And we've already seen through that Sapient report, there's a lot of organizations that are actually increasing their budget, at the very least maintaining their budget, even amidst economic headwinds. So what are you and your organization doing? Is it going to increase? Is it going to decrease? Is it going to stay the same? Or are you not sure? So we're going to give you a couple more minutes to, or a couple more seconds to fill that one out. But, I think it just underscores how critical technology has been to kind of close the gap on a lot of organizations that, maybe have been a little slow in the uptake of different technology platforms, or, well, we've been doing it manually and it ain't broke, so we're not going to fix it. When COVID hit and we all started working remote, that just put the pedal to the metal on a lot of these digital transformation stories. So not surprising to see that those budgets are going to go up. But Daniel, are we cool to close this out for now?
Yes, sir. I'm going to close it out right now.
Outstanding. So let's take a look. All right, 35% of you say that your budgets are going to increase. Another 35% say they're going to stay the same. Only 18% reporting a decrease, and another 12% not sure. So that's very, very consistent with what we're seeing in the marketplace, if not even a little on the high side, on the increase side. So that's awesome. If you've got those budgets starting to goose up, it means you're working for an organization that understands that you need help, that you need assistance in being able to automate these processes and be able to continue to serve your employee base well. So that's really good stuff. All right, so we are going to bring it home. Now, if the last few years have taught us anything, it's that the world of work can be pretty unpredictable. The best way to keep pace is to make sure you're working with a technology provider that can not only keep pace with those business needs as they change, but do so affordably and with minimal disruption. So platforms like Greenshades make it easy to adapt the implementation as operational conditions evolve, right? You also want to work with organizations that see themselves as extensions of your team, not just technology providers. So that means, people who have their ear to the ground on regulatory changes, on policy shifts, and other topics that can really blindside employers if they don't have the resources to keep track of all those moving parts, and there are a lot of them. So as we pointed out, the nature of your workforce itself is likely going to be evolving. So be sure to select technologies that support the totality of your employee base, not just a subset or, even not just the majority. Anytime you have to handle workers outside of the system, and think about your deskless employees, think about your remote employees, think about your employees that have kind of different outside of the norm payrolls that apply to them. Anytime you've got to handle them outside of a system, you're opening the door for potential errors at worst or gaps in data at best, right? And that just makes future decision making even more challenging. And then finally, automation is the key to being able to address these changes at a scale and at a speed that's really required today to stay ahead of the curve.
Right. And as Mark mentioned, working with partners who have a vested interest in helping your business to gain and grow a better understanding of what's necessary to succeed in today's environment is critical. At Greenshades, we like to do our part in keeping people informed, whether they're clients or not. So come visit our website, check out all the resources we have available now. Plus, we're always adding new content on a monthly basis to keep you informed and help you stay ahead of the critical issues, particularly compliance. And of course, if you're ready to chat with someone today, give us a call, send us an email to sales@greenshades.com. We'll be more than happy to see how we can help.
Awesome.
And so that brings us to the end of our formal presentation. If anyone has some Q&A questions, please put them in the chat and we'll cover some of those requests.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm taking a look, and there were some great questions that came through, but for the sake of everybody's time, maybe I'll just grab one, if that's okay with you, Mark and Danica, and then maybe we can cover the others in maybe future blog posts, just so we're fair to everybody's time. So the one I'll grab here states, how does Greenshades help us keep track of employee contact info after they move?
So with Greenshades, we have the onboarding employee self-service piece through the HR portal. And this is a great way for people to be able to go back after they're now an ex-employee, but they can still log in and grab old pay stubs, their year-end form stuff, anything like that.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.